previous situation. I was raised, with admiring the military. I mean, when I was watching TV as a youngster, I saw the liberation of Auschwitz and D-Day, and I saw the piles of bodies being moved around by bulldozers, and decided then that I couldn't stand by and let that kind of stuff happen again. If I ever saw people being mistreated or maltreated, I would speak up and try to fight the people who were doing it to them. So that became kind of ensconced into a view of, America right or wrong. America always fights for good. America always, does good, always has the best interest of people at heart. We're fighting against communism for freedom.
Right.
So, that's a lot of people held that view, but I held it to the point where I was willing to go out and put energy towards it. And, thought it in terms of being a, military hero. And so when I got to be 19, and it was obvious that I did not want to go to college. I graduated from high school, had to go an extra semester to graduate, but after I did that, I got into college and flunked out, and got in and left during the middle of the semester and decided, well, hell, like I said in my book, I was socially frustrated, sexually frustrated, and academically frustrated, and physically frustrated, and there was only one thing to do for like that, and that's to go to war and kill somebody. So, I decided that I would go and I would join the Marines, and I'd go to Vietnam and I'd kill people. Or I'd be killed myself, It would, I'd be either die rushing a foxhole and be a hero, or I'd kick the ass on the foxhole and be a hero there too. I mean, one way or another, I was going to be a hero. I just a lot of physical energy, misplaced physical values. So I went to the Marines and put in for 9. And I spent 5 weeks on Parris Island and had an attack of asthma and got discharged. I'd been asthmatic all my life and been out of the hospital a lot. And I was 4F. I couldn't be drafted, but I convinced a couple of doctors to write a letter that said that I'd outgrown my asthma, and so they did that, and the Marines took me. And I got there 5 weeks and ran into a dust storm and just collapsed, and they discharged me. So I came back, but I was still very pro-war. And the first anti-war demonstrations just showed up, and I physically almost attacked them. And I just couldn't believe what they were saying. That our government wouldn't do that. And so
our government wouldn't lie to the people.
Our government wouldn't lie to the people. Our government wouldn't. I mean, why would they do something like that? I mean, we had to beat communism. So but I hadn't done psychedelics at that time. So I got out and I started getting a little more of what life was about. I started working odd jobs, and then I hitchhiked around the country and ran into some psychedelics for the first time, and did a lot more psychedelics after that, and then a lot more psychedelics after that, and then a few more psychedelics after that before I really got into doing psychedelics. And so I started listening. I started getting different perspectives, and I started listening to what was going on, and I started looking for evidence and started trying to think for myself, and came to the conclusion that hey, this was not about containing communism, but this was a no-win policy. Now at this time, I was and remain today a Barry Goldwater conservative. I am a conservative. I'm the most conservative candidate in the state of Kentucky, most conservative politician in the state of Kentucky. I'm a Barry Goldwater conservative, not a neo-Nazi conservative. What's happened is that in their takeover, this New World Order has used the method of newspeak, applied the concept of newspeak to certain principles and terms which America could be guided at one time because everybody understood what they meant. The word conservative is one of those things that they practice newspeak on. And Mitch McConnell and Newt Gingrich were not conservatives, they were aliens. And Barry Goldwater was in fact a conservative, and he would take Mitch and Newt by the ear and lead them behind the woodpile and kick their butts for trying to pass off a bloated police state as a conservative law and order philosophy, but that's what they're doing. And they say they're conservatives, but they never met a budget they didn't like, especially increasing budgets for, getting into people's bedrooms and bloodstreams and bladders and brains and billfolds and back pockets. That Barry Goldwater and those kinds of conservatives, such as myself, believe that We should be a minimalist government, not poking around people's private lives and private behavior, and certainly not in the business of imprisoning people for private corporations' dividend checks. All those things are just absolutely antithetical to my concept of America. But
You talk about the people processing industry.
yes, finish on this anti-war thing.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Processing industry, Joe, just a second.
Okay.
But my point on this is that I discovered that we were in Southeast Asia trying to establish an economic beachhead. That what we were actually trying to do was to get them dependent upon the U.S. dollar to see if we couldn't make inroads into, forcing them into the U.S. dollar and forcing them into some sort of a situation. But the big thing we were there was divide up the oil reserves in the Tonkin Gulf. That the Tonkin Gulf shelf had proven oil reserves, and the oil companies had already divided up who got what when they were able to secure victory in Vietnam. And so that sired me no end. And I
Sounds familiar.
spoke with Ferdinand Lundberg, who wrote a book called The Rich and the Super Rich, and who was financial editor for the New York Times. And we had a conversation about this, and he shared the same view that, that we were there as much for the oil as anything else. And so I started getting really sired. I started to question the whole American system. But then one day I was in Nixon and Agnew were there, and I became anti-war. One day I was at a football game with a black drug dealer, and so he was sitting there. We were sitting there, and they started playing the national anthem, and he stood up and put his hand over his heart. And I'm still sitting there, son of a bitches, I've been misbeating this and stuff like that. He pokes me and says, "Get up, Galbraith." And I said, "Oh, screw you, And he said, "No, poke me again." I said, "No, get up." He said, "You got your head up your ass, son." He says, "You're letting your view on those bastards who are occupying the offices of this system color your view on the system itself." He says, "The system ain't wrong, it's the assholes who are occupying those positions. The system is right." It's like, it was just an epiphany. I mean, the guy's absolutely correct, So I stood up and placed my hand over my heart. It took a black drug dealer with a high school education to remind me of that basic thing. That we live in a fantastic system, but the assholes who get control of it are charting courses that I don't particularly agree with. But one of the things I don't want to agree with is that the jailing of millions of our citizens, especially in private prisons. I tell the classes that I talk to, the campuses, high school and college, that maybe a couple hundred of them sitting there, I'm saying, now 12 of you all statistically are slated for prison. That we now have an economy based on feeding people, as Christopher Largen, into a prison economy that depends on a certain percentage of the population being counted on as prison units being more economically important than working, self-surviving people. And if you don't break a law right now, they'll create a new law that you will break. And, that's come about because of private prisons and their drive for corporate bottom line, increasing corporate bottom line profits. And, they have managed to double the prison population over the last 20 years, and they're going to do it again in another 20.
So prisons are big business.
Absolutely.
And they've been privatized. They've been privatized.
Three ways you can double prison population. Number one is to catch twice as many people. And how are you going to do that without creating a police state? Number two is give everybody double the prison sentence time. But how can you give them more than life without parole? Number three is that you create more people to be processed. And that is you create more new laws that people fall under the thumb and get sent to prison. And to me, it's just a new age, modern form of slavery. I call it the people processing industry. And, they don't have to create a product. They don't have to render a service to the private sector. They've got their own little terrarium of economy there, economic terrarium, where they just feed people in, put people out, feed more people in the other end, on a coerced basis. And taxpayer ends up paying for it, and corporations get a larger dividend check depending on putting more people in those beds at night on a coerced basis. I think that it just makes my blood run cold.
Yeah, one thing, Gatewood, is that you've been a champion for the truth, and in talking about